Let's take a look at this cute little guy called the siege tank. Now the siege tank is a tank that has two different states. Or two different modes. It has a tank mode and a siege mode. Right now he's in tank mode and he can drive around the map, position himself anywhere, and he has all these different properties like how much damage he does, his range, his weapon speed, etc., etc. But the main thing is that he can go into this stationary mode called siege mode, where he gets much more powerful, but he cannot move. You'll see his damage has gone way up, but if I try and click around, it'll say no units can handle that command because this guy cannot move. So we switch over to tank mode. He can move around, and his damage has gone way, way down. But if we switch back to siege mode, he can't move, and his damage has gone way up. Now let's see how the state pattern can help us handle these sorts of scenarios. Alright, let's dive right into this example of how the state pattern can help us manage things like state and mode and type, whatever, for the siege tank. So I just create a siege tank. When you click, it's going to tell the siege tank to move. When you hit the space bar, it's going to tell the siege tank to attack. When you hit the 1 key, it's going to say go to tank mode. When you hit the 2 key, it's going to say go to siege mode. So if you look at the demo real quick, we've got a little red siege tank with a damage of 10, can move true. If I click, it says move to XY. Hit space, it says attacking for 10. Hit 2. Now I'm in siege mode. Damage 20, can move false. Click, sorry, can't move because I'm in siege mode. And I hit space, I'm attacking for 20. Hit 1, back to tank mode, click, space, 2, click, space. Pretty self-explanatory. So if we look at our siege tank, basically set up some text fields to show those values. And most of it happens in here, in 2 tank mode and 2 siege mode. When you're in tank mode, it's going to set the damage to 10, can move to true, color to red. And then it's going to say apply state. And basically this just updates the visuals so you can see that the state has changed. But when you're in siege mode, damage is 20, can move is false, color is green. And then also when you attack, you hit the space key, it's going to say attacking for the current amount of damage. And when you hit move, it's going to try and move if it can, based on whether you're in tank mode or siege mode. And if it can't, it's going to just say can't move. Now, as always, things get more and more complicated because requirements change. So say, for example, they want to add a new state here, a new mode called speed mode. Now this is going to allow the siege tank to fly across the screen at super speeds, but you are not going to be able to do any damage at all. In fact, you're not going to be able to attack. So we'll say damage is 0, can move is true, and color is blue. Now actually, when you think about it, damage shouldn't be 0. You should actually prevent the tank from attacking when you are in speed mode. So you'd probably start setting up something like can attack equals false. And in the other modes, you'd say can attack equals true. And then in the attack method, we'd say if can attack. And this is the point where you need to stop and think. There's got to be a better way than starting to load up all of these methods and everything in this class with if-else statements. Because pretty soon, more requirements are going to change, and it's going to be if can attack and can move, and the color is green, and the damage is 20. And you're going to keep on running into these scenarios where, based on all of these different properties, it's going to have to do a specific thing. Now, this is where the state pattern comes into play. So let's get rid of these can attacks. And let's delegate the responsibility of these properties off to a state object. A state object is going to look something like this. We will call this tank state. So we have a reference to our siege tank, and we'll use that later. Just kind of ignore it for right now. And we'll have a couple things. We'll have a get damage. So whenever you request the damage, it's going to return, when you're in tank state, 10. So I was going to have a get. The other one was can move. And since you're in tank state, it's going to return true, and also it's going to have a get color, and this is going to return a uint, and this will return red. Sorry, that's supposed to be a Boolean. So our tank state, just has the properties, and we're going to let the tank state manage these properties. So how we're going to map this or contract it or, set up how these two relate between the tank state and the siege tank, we're going to create an interface. So we'll say extract interface from our tank state, and we'll call this iSiege tank state. And we want the damage, can move, and the color all in our, let me open this up so you can see it, iSiege tank state. So anything that is an iSiege tank state is going to have damage, can move, and color. So because we know that, we can have a state on our siege tank called simply state. And we'll call it iSiege tank state. And we'll have a tank state, which is a tank state. Now we have to actually instantiate the tank state because we have to pass in the reference to this. And now whenever we switch to tank mode, instead of setting the properties here, we'll just say state is tank state. And we'll know that from now on, whenever we reference state, it's going to grab the properties that are assigned as tank state. So we can jump in here. Once it applies the state, it will grab the damage off of the state. We'll grab can move off of the state. We'll grab the color off of the state. And again, the damage off the state and can move off of the state. So now we're referencing this state object, and this is pretty much a state pattern in a nutshell. Referencing these properties and how it changes off of the state object, which can simply be changed by assigning something like state is tank state. Now we can run this right now and it'll work just like it did before in the tank state mode. See, I'm clicking, it's grabbing these properties off of tank state. Now to create these other states, we can simply just do some copy and pasting. Instead of tank state, this one will be called siege state, and instead of 10, it'll be 20. Instead of can move true, it'll be can move false. And instead of red, it is going to be green. Now all we have to do in siege tank is jump up to here, create our siege state. And same thing here is siege state is a new siege state, and pass in this. Now when we switch to siege mode, we say state equals siege state. I hope you see a pattern developing. Now we can jump back and forth. If I hit 2, we'll jump over to our siege state, can't move, attacking for 20, 1, can move, attacking for 10. Now same thing for speed mode. We'll quickly just copy and paste the siege state. Say speed state, and now the damage is 0. Can move is true, and the color is blue. Let me double check real quick that I have to set this up. So siege tank to speed mode when I hit the keyboard 3. Have to go back. One thing I missed is swapping out the state here. So state is now, I'm getting way ahead of myself. Have to create the speed state first before I can assign to it. And same thing here, speed, state, it's new, speed, state, pass in this, and speed, state, voila. Now it's set up properly, and I typed everything out just as I should have. Now if I hit 3, we'll jump over into speed state where damage is 0 and can move is true. I'm moving just fine, and I'm attacking for 0. Now, because we're using the state pattern, and you'll see things like these if-else statements, which can also be delegated to the state objects. So instead of saying state or checking if state can move, what we're going to do, we're just going to say whenever you call move, we'll just pass on move to a function on the state, which we'll call move. And then we can determine within the state what move should do. So it's basically just grab this guy, plop him into the interface here. So every state now has to have this move function. And we'll jump into, let's grab this entire thing and copy it. And we'll dump him in here. We don't need any of this garbage anymore. All we have to say is when you call move in the siege tanks or in the tank state, we will tell a siege tank move text field dot text equals moving to plus target x plus comma space whatever target y. So whenever you're in the tank state, it's going to call this exact thing, which it would have called before if can move was true. And let's do a similar thing for the other states. So we're in tank state, we'll switch over to the siege state. And in siege state, we can't move. So let's put the can't move frowny face. And over in the speed state, we can do the same thing. Let's just say instead this time moving quickly to the X and Y. Now if you switch back to the siege tank, we can get rid of all this if-else garbage and just say state move target X, target Y. And it'll accomplish the exact same thing, and we've got rid of the if-else. And switching between the states, everything still works. Attacking, etc., etc. So now we're handing over the move to the state object. And what this also allows us to do is, if we want to, and we don't need to expose the can move, we can just get rid of it now since we're not using it anywhere to check if you can move. I'm just going to leave it there because I'm lazy and I don't want to delete it right now. Also for the attack, since in our speed state we shouldn't be able to attack, we can delegate attack over to all of our states. So we'll say all you guys are going to need to attack. So in the tank state, we're going to say siege tank attack text field attacking for damage, which in this case is going to be 10. In our siege state, we can say siege tank attacking for damage 20, and then in our speed state we can put this in and completely prevent the siege tank attack text field text is can't attack, frowny face. So now in our siege tank we can just simply hand over attacking to the state, and in each of the different states it's going to do what it should do in that specific state. So if we run this now and we switch over to our speed state and we hit the space bar, it's going to say can't attack. If we're in siege, it's going to say attacking for 20. In tank mode, attacking for 10. Back to 20. Back to can't attack at all. And this is a great way of just handing over the responsibility of attacking, moving, etc., to the state objects, which will manage all of this for you. Now, the last trick here, which something that is very difficult to handle if you weren't to use a state pattern, is actually moving between the different states, transitioning from state to state. So say, for example, your requirements are now that if you are in siege mode, you cannot transition to speed mode. So if you're in siege mode, you cannot go to speed mode. So what we're going to do here is take each of the transitions, and we'll put them into, let me grab each of these individually. So to tank mode, we'll grab to siege mode, and we'll grab to speed mode. And so now all of our states are going to handle these transitions instead of transitioning within the siege tank object. So within our tank mode, when we say state, we'll say state to tank mode, we will say state to siege mode, and we'll say state to speed mode. Now, the cool thing that this allows us to do is if we go into, going to need all of these, if we go into the tank state, we can simply say, if you're in tank mode already, you can say siege tank. So say you're in tank mode and you're trying to go to tank mode. This is something that we couldn't do before. We'll just say message already in tank mode. And let's set the text property of that to the string. And if you're in siege mode, we'll just say siege tank state is siege tank siege mode or siege state. And to go to speed mode, we'll say siege tank state is siege tank speed mode, speed state. So now we can do the exact same thing in the other states. This time we'll hop over to siege state, paste these guys at the bottom. Instead of, now we're already in siege state, so we'll say already in siege mode. And whenever you try and go to, from siege state to the tank state, we can just say to tank state. And our new requirement, if you remember, is whenever you're in siege state, you cannot go to speed mode. So all we have to do here is say siege tank message text field text can't go to speed from siege. And lastly, we'll hop over to speed state. Same thing, real quick. I'm already in speed mode. And when you go to siege mode from speed state, we'll say state is siege tank, siege state, and then the rest should be just fine. So the main thing here is if we allow the states to handle transitions, we can do these cool little features like when you're in siege state, you can prevent him from going to can't go to speed from the siege state mode. And then one last thing we're going to do is instead of setting our default state by using this method, we actually have to manually assign it now, tank state, because if we tried to call to tank mode and state wasn't set, there's no way state could call to tank mode. And then you'll notice a pattern that every time we set the state, we're doing apply state. So we might as well, create a getter or a setter, getter setter for the state. And anytime state is set here, there we go, that looks better. Anytime the state is set, we will say apply state. So now we're up and ready to rock and roll. So we're in red, we're in tank mode, click around, move just fine, hit attack for 10, switch over to siege mode, can't move, we attack for 20. Now again, we try and change from state or from siege to speed mode. What's going to happen? I hit 3. It says can't go to speed from siege. And that is our awesome new feature. So we're already in siege mode. And then I try and go to 3, can't go to speed from siege, already in siege, but I can go back to 1. And then from 1, which is tank mode, since I'm already in tank mode, I can head over to 3, which is our speed mode. If I hit speed mode, I'll say I'm already in speed mode. So speed mode, tank mode, siege mode, speed mode, nope, can't do it. Siege mode, I'm already in siege mode. Again, this is just a really cool way of handling how the transitions work from one state to another. Using these little state objects is really going to help you organize, the different properties, the different methods, the ways you transition from state to state, and it's going to make your code a lot cleaner and avoid some of the crazy if-else statements you've probably been writing. And on a final note, you probably noticed this is a lot like the strategy pattern that I addressed in the last tutorial. Now, the main difference there is that the strategy pattern is more about instead of creating a vehicle class and then subclassing it with the Viking and then adding all the different fly methods in the vehicle, then overriding them within the Viking. It was more about using composition to pass in a behavior and setting a behavior externally, whereas even though the state pattern looks just like it, the state pattern is all about managing state internally. So you'll see that all of the different properties and methods are set within the siege tank, which can be our state machine, instead of being set through composition by passing in a behavior. So just a final note to close on. Hope you enjoyed it.